The Chicago Bears didn't have a lot of salary cap space to work with, but Ryan Poles found ways to move the numbers around and fill some of the team's biggest needs on the first day of free agent negotiation.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. And on the show today, we're going to break down the new 3 outside free agent signings of the Chicago Bears from Monday. Safety Coby Bryant from the Seattle Seahawks, linebacker Devin Bush from the Cleveland Browns, and defensive tackle Neville Gallimore from the Indianapolis Colts. Where they fit on the Bears roster and how they fit in this salary cap picture where they give out some decent-sized contracts to these players. Bears didn't have a ton of cap space to work with, but they moved some things around and still got good value along the way without totally mortgaging their future or sacrificing some of that future flexibility. So not that these free agent signings are going to solve all their problems, but a lot to like from a smart and lower key approach from Ryan Poles to free agency this year. I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And we start with the biggest splash signing in Seattle Seahawks safety Coby Bryant, who I think is a great fit, a really solid signing, and someone who should instantly upgrade the Bears' safety room. The bigger question is going to be what it leaves for the safety position next to him. And that will still need to be addressed by Ryan Poles, and this could signal more turnover at that position than maybe we had initially thought. But right off the bat, Coby Bryant comes in as an ascending young player who is playing at a high level. He was really critical to what the Seattle Seahawks were able to do coverage-wise on the back end of their defense. He had the 4 interceptions and he had 3 last year. He's got pass breakups. He's got the playmaking stats. But part of what made Seattle's defense this year so good is that Mike Macdonald, the head coach / defensive play caller, could use their 2 safeties as deep safeties, like a 2-deep kind of cover 2 shell, he and Julian Love, and then at the last possible second, switch to a single high safety coverage where it's even after the ball is snapped and even after the quarterback is going through a drop back, they still haven't changed coverages. They can hide it until late in the play because players like Coby Bryant have the instincts to read and react and attack the QB in a way where even if the safety is intentionally not where he's supposed to be at the start of a play in order to fool the quarterback, he's quick and decisive and reactive enough to then get where he is supposed to be once the quarterback has been fooled. And the kind of stresses that scheme put on opposing quarterbacks is part of why the Seahawks defense was so good. And it's Coby Bryant's instincts and just football IQ plus good speed and tackling ability and ball skills. He's not an absolute burner at the safety position, but he's not slow either. He's just he's got good speed there. And to me, he represents a real upgrade in the Bears secondary as a player who is about to turn 27 years old at the end of this month. He can be a 3-year starter for you on this 3-year, $40 million contract the Bears signed him to. That's the other aspect of it. I wasn't expecting Ryan Poles to spend that much at the safety position, but he did a good job structuring it to be smart for the Bears, and also it still feels like good value for Coby Bryant. We were wondering how big these safety markets and the safety contract was going to get, but that 3 years, $40 million, right? That averages out to, for all you math majors out there, just over $13 million per season. And that is around, looks like 12th to 15th highest paid safety in football. They did not have to break the bank and give him top elite safety money. He's getting less than than Xavier McKinney got from the Packers a couple of seasons ago, or less than Kyle Hamilton at the top and Kirby Joseph at the top. Like, this is a reasonable, affordable contract, right in the same range that Cam Curl got from the Rams, and the Bengals gave Brian Cooks just slightly more than what the Bears gave Coby Bryant. Like, this is good value for Chicago, and Ryan Poles backloaded it in a way that made it easier for them to afford right now without totally devastating their long-term financial flexibility. So as the contract has been posted on overthecap.com, his cap hit this year is only $6 million. Coby Bryant will only cost the Bears $6 million this year. Well, money's a little tight. But then next year in 2027, he'll cost $17 million. And the year after that, he will cost $17 million. And so the Bears have a lot more salary cap space unassigned in the future to be able to afford him at $17 million. But even at $17 million, that's still not top 5 safety money in the NFL, right? It's still fairly affordable at 17, and you're getting all the savings right now at about $6 million this first season, and he's still a young player who's ascending and playing well. It just seems like it's a smart contract all around that really should give the Bears some long-term stability here with a young player, give Coby Bryant a nice reward for his career, and I think this is a guy that Dennis Allen can do a lot with on the back end in terms of coverage, versatility, and the different things, depending on who he pairs with Coby Bryant, because earlier in Bryant's career, he played some slot cornerback as a rookie for the Seahawks. Like, he's got the ability to play deep safety, and he was, this past season, primarily a free safety the vast majority of the time, but previous years he's played more in the slot and more in the box. Like, I think he will play more of a free safety role for the Chicago Bears defense, and leave some question marks about what that'll put next to him, but it's not out of the question that Dennis Allen could try and still pair him with more of a free safety type and get Coby back to playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Like, I think the easy assumption is signing Coby Bryant takes them out of the Kevin Byard sweepstakes. Not that it's a sweepstakes, but like, they signed Coby Bryant in place of Kevin Byard, and that they were not going to re-sign Brisker anyway, but Bryant is more of a Byard replacement than a Brisker replacement. I suspect that is likely true, but I don't know that it's 100% closing the door on Kevin Byard either. This is all going to come down to price tag for me. If Ryan Poles is giving Coby Bryant a contract that's worth $13 million a year, he's not going to go out and give another safety a $10+ million a year contract. I think he's going to wait and see, and it might have to wait that long, but I do think he's going to wait this out a little bit and see how the safety market continues to mature from here. And if things slow down a little bit and price tags come down a little bit, that's when I think you'll see him make his second safety signing. They still have a big hole next to Coby Bryant, and that second safety, in theory, could still be Kevin Byard if his price comes down or just is in general reasonable and relatively low. But if Byard is able to get more money or seeking a larger amount of money, like, I think ultimately it's probably more likely at this point that Byard ends up somewhere else, and Poles looks for more of a discount option here. You might think like a Donovan Wilson from the Cowboys, as someone who's worked with Al Harris before, or Xavier Woods from the Titans, who also previously worked for Al Harris and played safety for this defensive backs coach before. There's a number of guys out there. It's still plenty of safeties available, and that's why I think Poles got his young guy that's maybe a little more of a splash kind of signing, but got him in before other big contracts potentially went out there, and now he's going to wait and get a more affordable second safety option that I think is going to be cheaper, but good enough to start, but not so good to prevent you from drafting a safety early this year. Like, I think it's going to be similar to the center position. The other safety is going to be, he's going to get his Garrett Bradbury version of a safety, where the player they bring in to pair with Coby Bryant, if he's starting week 1, that's fine. But you would also like to draft a player, a starting caliber player at that position, and also have them compete. And if the rookie is better, great. This other player that you signed isn't so expensive that they can't be a backup, but also you want to be able to trust them to start. And I'm guessing that's going to be the type of needle Ryan Poles tries to thread here, and that's mostly going to come down to price tag more than anything else. And I do think it's going to be a priority for them to draft a safety in a draft class that has some pretty darn good safeties in it as well. So I think you can feel really good about Coby Bryant's fit in this Bears defense and not taking up too much space, and yet still being a nice long-term piece for the back end of this defense. I find myself a little more skeptical about linebacker Devin Bush. But we do need to see how the numbers come out, and I do think having a little bit of time to look at what he did in Cleveland compared to what he had done earlier in his career in Pittsburgh, I think there's still a lot to like, too, about the linebacker the Bears signed. So we'll take a look at him and the re-signing of DeMarco Jackson and what this Bears linebacking core is going to look like now, next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, and emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. So Coby Bryant is the big splash signing of the day, but Devin Bush was more at linebacker than I expected Ryan Poles to spend as well, while still threading this needle of pretty good value there. Didn't have to overspend on a player that there was some talk he could get $15 or more million a year as a free agent contract. It said the Bears get Devin Bush from the Cleveland Browns on a 3-year, $30 million deal that maths out to about $10 million per season. Now, we haven't seen the exact details on exactly how it's structured, what the cap hits are going to be in year 1, 2, and 3. I mean, we know it's I think $21 million guaranteed, so you're pretty well going to be locked into the first 2 seasons, and then you could get rid of him after year 3, or after year 2 before year 3, if things don't go well for him. But he's coming off the best season of his career with the Cleveland Browns, and there's a lot to like about the kind of progress Devin Bush has made. I have a little bit of linebacker PTSD here with Devin Bush in particular, because the path sounds a little familiar. You drafted as a first-round athletic freak to the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Ran like a 4.3 something, I think, at the combine at 230 pounds or whatever. Like, Ryan Poles said he wanted to add speed to this Bears defense. He absolutely added speed with Devin Bush. But first-round pick by the Steelers, little raw, trying to figure things out, but athletic and gets around pretty well. So they kind of like his playmaking ability. His flashes a little bit in year 1, but still a lot to work on. Year 2, tears his ACL. Oh, crap, right? Like, disrupting some of that development progress. Year 3 and year 4, like, never really took that next step forward. A player kind of known for not being able to take on blocks in the running game and kind of get washed out. Like, he's fast, but not really doing much with that speed. Just kind of running around a lot. And now, coming off of his best season, the Bears come in and sign him and give him a big contract. But, like, are you going to get best season Devin Bush, or are you going to get, previous year's Devin Bush? And it was a very similar trajectory, albeit without the same change of teams, as like Tremaine Edmonds coming to Chicago, right? Like, athletic freak. I think he was a first-round pick for them as well. Yeah, he was a first-round pick for them. Athletic freak, but never really quite put it all together. Then has one really good season at the end, and the Bears sign him. And he's not that really good season player. He's a little closer to what he was the whole time before. That's my concern about Devin Bush. I do think generally, though, the things he did in Cleveland looked like real progress to me, and not just like, there was some thought in Buffalo that Tremaine Edmonds got better because they added to that defensive line and then his job got easier, so then he looked a lot better. Whereas I think Devin Bush in Cleveland is more physical, is more willing to take on blocks, is a little smarter, is a little better tackler. Like, I think there is some real tangible progress he's made there. I'm not convinced he's going to be, Pro Bowl player or whatever and come to Chicago. But then we kind of come back to, well, for only $10 million a year, he doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Like, he just has to be good enough, right? It has to be solid and reliable. Because when you think about it, they cut Tremaine Edmonds and saved $15 million in salary cap space. And they were able to, with that $15 million, sign Devin Bush for $10 million a year and re-signed DeMarco Jackson for a couple million, or was it a couple handful of million for him too, and still have some money left over. And so it feels a little bit like a 2-for-1 here, where like you subtract Edmonds, but you get to add back Jackson and Bush for less than that same price. And I feel like that's a net positive for the Bears linebacking core. Like this is a group that has definitely gotten faster and deeper and gives you just I think a little bit more of what Dennis Allen is looking for at the position compared to what he inherited from Matt Eberflus. Like Bush's speed can help make up in coverage when, you know, if TJ Edwards is going to be a little bit more of the slower thumper in the running game, right? You can kind of have that balance and you know, pass things off as needed. So it's harder to isolate TJ Edwards in some of those one-on-one matchups with a tight end, for example. Like there's just more you can do now with these linebackers locked in under contract in your scheme. We do still need to see the Devin Bush numbers to know what he's going to cost you this year compared to the next couple seasons. And that kind of financial flexibility is going to be an important part of this equation. But I do think it represents good value on the linebacker market, where again, like we weren't expecting big spending from Ryan Poles, but like Devin Bush got less than Tremaine Edmonds got as a free agent. You know, he got $12 million a year from the Giants. Even Demario Davis, who we had talked about as kind of the older, kind of washed Saints linebacker who we thought the Bears might want to go and bring in, like he gets 1 year, I think $11 million. Like he's getting more this season than Devin Bush will. The Poles, kind of like at the safety position, came in, got his guy quickly at a pretty affordable and reasonable price, and didn't wait to see what Edmonds would get, what Bobby Okereke is going to get. I guess we saw Alex Anzalone around that same time go for a little bit less, but I think Devin Bush, I trust him a little bit more than Alex Anzalone. Like there's going to be other young linebackers here, you know, that are in position. Devin White from the Raiders, right, is expected to get some bigger numbers that are going to raise these price tags up, and I think help make the Devin Bush deal for the Bears even a little bit more affordable. Like this is the kind of, I think there's a gamble a little bit on Bush. You're counting on him continuing to play at a high level, but that gamble is much more reasonable on a 3-year, $30 million contract than it would be on a 3-year, $45 million contract. Or, I mean, they gave even more than that to Tremaine Edmonds when they took a similar type of gamble on him 3 years ago. So to me, like I have some skepticism about Devin Bush as the signing, but I think I'm okay with some cautious optimism and feel like, hey, this isn't the kind of move that even if you're wrong and he busts, like it's not totally financially crippling to where it's going to be. Obviously, there's going to be negative impacts if any big name free agent doesn't pan out, but I think there's enough financial safeguards and flexibility in here that they can be okay going in on a Devin Bush like this kind of signing. I just think it fits nicely with Ryan Poles' approach to, you know, just kind of get these better value players, knowing that you're not going to have a ton of salary cap space to make those big splashes. So you make these kind of medium splashes of guys who could be even better in Chicago, could have even more growth in their career moving forward than even what we had seen the last couple of seasons for them. These are still ascending players relatively early in their careers or entering their prime that can be part of this defense, not just as a 1-year stopgap to kind of fill a hole, but to be here for 2 or 3 seasons, and if they play well enough, maybe an extension beyond that to be a part of your defense for some time. So like this is getting Dennis Allen more of his guys. And I like too that, like, you know, now you don't feel as much of a pressure to say draft a linebacker early that has to be a starter. Like you could draft one later, but you don't need to use an early pick on a linebacker. We talked about it. You still probably would want to draft a safety, and the lack of larger investment in the defensive line signals that they're definitely going to prioritize, not reach, but prioritize defensive linemen in the draft. They did bring in a defensive tackle from the Indianapolis Colts, Neville Gallimore. Don't expect him to solve all of the Bears' problems, but I don't dislike the move at all. Like I think there is also the potential for value here, but also I just think it's a lower stakes free agent signing by comparison. So we'll take a look at Neville Gallimore and where he fits into this Bears defensive line rotation next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. This time of year, is a big one for college basketball, and it's nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the boards. We're getting into conference tournament time, and heck, it's March, so you know there's madness right around the corner. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read, and then you can mix the spreads and the totals and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then just apply that profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you want to take your everyday listening to the next level, be sure to check out the new Locked On Bears Everydayers Club. It's going to give you access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On Bears that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of your favorite podcasting apps. Plus, you'll get members-only Discord access and more. So if you want to check it out, the link is lockedonbears.supercast.com. And right now, if you use our promo code FREEAGENCY, you're going to get a free month of ad-free Locked On Bears and Discord access. Again, lockedonbears.supercast.com, promo code FREEAGENCY. You can find that link in the show notes descriptions wherever you tune in to the Locked On Bears podcast. But the lesser of the three outside free agent signings was Neville Gallimore coming over from the Indianapolis Colts. He had only spent just this past season with the Colts. Prior to that, he had been a few different spots around the NFL, but there's not really a direct Bears coaching staff connection I can find. I mean, he was in Dallas for 4 seasons, so like Al Harris was there, but not coaching the defensive line, and then spent a year with the Rams in between going to the Colts. But this was his career best year in Indianapolis, probably his career biggest role as well. 3.5 sacks, a number of hits and pressures as well. Was a kind of the number three technique interior pass rusher type. And then when DeForest Buckner got hurt, he kind of stepped into a starting role, but still rotating, but starting type of role there, and had his best season yet. So, you say 3.5 sacks and some pressures, right? He's not coming in and fixing the Bears' pass rush and is going to solve all of their defensive line problems. But I do think he's good value with some upside here. And, some strength. And I think it's just even the depth at defensive tackle needed to be upgraded from where it was last season. I know, what it ended up being 2 years, $12 million, about $6 million a year is what the contract came out to be. But ultimately, his cap hit this season is only set to be $4 million. So 2 years, $10 million that I think can be worth up to $12 million through incentives and escalators. So, he's only going to cost the Bears $4 million this season. And if he's bad, you can cut him next year and not really have much dead money. So, think of him, he's on a 1-year, $4 million deal with a second-year team option where if he plays pretty well, he'll get a raise. And if he doesn't play very well, then they can cut him and kind of get out of it. When you frame it that way, it's a lot more approachable and accessible and reasonable, right? A backup pass rushing interior defensive tackle for $4 million, sure. Especially in a year when there just wasn't a lot at defensive tackle in terms of even the top end. It's not a deep defensive tackle free agent class. And we saw the big name, John Franklin Myers from the Denver Broncos, goes to the Tennessee Titans for what did it end up being, $21 million a year. The Bears were never going to be in on that kind of money for him. Or, Draymond Jones goes to the Patriots for $12 million, David Onyemata for $10 million, Sheldon Rankins for $8.5 million. Any of these kind of names that would have been a similar role for the Bears, maybe more proven but older players by comparison. I'm not here to say Neville Gallimore was some genius home run signing. If anything, I'm here to say it's not that big of a deal. Even if you don't like it, it's pretty small potatoes in all of this, and it fills important depth in the defensive line. They had 2 defensive tackles under contract up to this point. It was Jarrett and Gervon Dexter. Gallimore can keep Jarrett fresh. He has some starting experience, so if there are injuries at defensive tackle, he can fill in there. Obviously, a position that you still need to do more in. But hey, quickly get a guy cheap to give you depth and bodies at the position at the start of free agency, just to kind of fill that hole briefly, I'm totally okay with. What I would not be okay with is if that's all the Bears really do at the defensive line. Like, I need early draft picks at edge rusher and defensive tackle this year. I mean, ideally, you got a first and 2 seconds and a third. I would like, out of those 4 picks, in some order, I would like them to include a defensive tackle and a defensive end. I don't want to sit there and reach for a guy and say, well, you just have to take one, so you have to take one. But like, somewhere in those picks, there should be players that you like at those positions, or you trade down or you trade up to get guys at those positions that you like, because it's too important to not address more significantly, and you just don't have the salary cap space nor the free agent options to address it more significantly. Like, they were never going to sign Trey Hendrickson. They were never going to trade for Max Crosby fully. Like, they discussed it, but you know what I mean? They were never going to go all in some of these big kind of moves. It's all about value up front of the defensive line, because you had to fill these holes at safety and at linebacker and at center and at left tackle, bringing back Braxton Jones. Like, he's costing you more than he did last year. Like, that's just a nature of the beast. DeMarco Jackson costs you more than he did last year. Like, even though these guys are coming back, they still cost you more. There's a cost that's associated with that. So I expect that the defensive line impact splashes to be more draft focused than free agency focused. I still think they may sign another defensive end or defensive tackle just as depth, another Neville Gallimore type, someone who costs $5 or less million this season is what I'm still expecting on that front. It's about the same price I'm thinking for a safety, right? Someone who costs about 7 or less. They just don't have a ton of cap space left to make big splash signings. It's going to be cheaper options there. Same thing at wide receiver. Like, I think a cheap receiver is coming, but most of the rest of what we're going to see beyond that is veteran minimum type of contracts, because that's just kind of where the Bears are. And honestly, I think watching this first day of free agency, I find myself appreciating it more and more. It's one thing to sit there and see like, oh man, like that really good player signed there. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example. I mean, I guess Tyler Linderbaum, right? Signs, oh man, you would have wanted him to be your center upgrade. Or like Odafe Owe from the Chargers goes to the Commanders, and you're like, oh man, that would have been a good edge rusher for the Bears or whatever. But like, I also look at some of these teams that are handing out cash left and right, and I'm like, man, like the Raiders are really, they just look desperate and have spent a bunch of money on a bunch of players that might be good, but typically the team that spends all the money in free agency isn't the team that gets the most better. There isn't the team that goes to the Super Bowl. A lot of free agent spending doesn't typically equate towards a lot more wins. And the Bears have kind of been that team a couple of off seasons in a row. And I find myself appreciating like, yeah, hey, the Bears didn't spend $27 million on Tyler Linderbaum out of freaking nowhere. That's a crazy, crazy contract. I'm glad the Bears aren't the team that everyone's scratching their head going, why did they spend so much money on that guy? Like, I think there was some of that last year with Grady Jarrett and Dio Dengbo. I'm glad it's not them this year. Now it's the Colts, and they spent that much money on Alec Pierce, and it's the Raiders, and they spent that much money on Tyler Linderbaum, and it's the Packers, the Cowboys, and then they traded for Rashawn Gary. They gave up a 4th-round pick for Rashawn Gary, or Dolphins gave up that much money for Malik Willis. I mean, across the board, there's a bunch of head-scratching signings out there. I don't think the Bears have really approached that territory yet. They're taking the more like smarter, conservative approach, I think with an emphasis on, hey, build with those premium draft picks. That's what's most long-term sustainable. Fill some quick holes in free agency. Don't overspend to do so. Like, get your cards in order a little bit. Then you can go in the draft and really hit it hard. We will have plenty of time to look at all the different ways the Bears can hit the draft hard here on the Locked On Bears podcast, but we got a bunch of free agency left. I'm sure by the time you listen to this podcast on Tuesday, the Bears will probably have signed somebody else. I mean, heck, I'm recording this Monday night, and I'm nervous to still be up for a few more hours before I go to bed, because they might sign somebody in between the time I record this and the time this podcast comes out first thing in the morning on Tuesday. So it's always a tricky game to play in NFL free agency, trying to keep up with the podcast, but we keep you up to date on all the moves as they happen on Locked On Bears and also on the Locked On Bears social media pages. We post reels and shorts on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook reels as well. Like every Bears signing, we're out there instantly with some quick analysis, and then you can come to the full podcast for more right here each and every day. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget the Everydayers Club, lockedonbears.supercast.com for Discord access and ad-free listening. promo code free agency for a free month. The link's in the show notes. But however you tune into Locked On Bears, we really appreciate it. We're free and available on all platforms. And we try and make sure that each and every day we give you another opportunity to bear down.